So we are officially about a week out from OpenAI's Dev Day last week, and so I think the real takes can actually start to settle in now that I've had time to kind of process and go through a lot of this stuff. And again, I think the kind of meme here was that Zapier, N8N, workflow tools like that were really the ones that were going to be affected mostly by what OpenAI launched with Agent Builder. But after really diving into things and going through setting up everything in Agent Builder and ChatKit and all the different things they launched, came to a totally different conclusion that it is actually not the workflow builders that really have to be worried, but rather it is the kind of AI dev tooling companies. And I say this as someone who's very much so in that space and have been for a while. For those of you that don't know, I have been running PromptHub. We're in the AI dev tooling space. It's a GitHub for prompts to a degree. I think we're less dev tooly than some of our competitors. But even before that, I launched and was running a kind of dev tool type company where you'd integrate a chat widget, or not a chat widget, a feedback widget on your site that would allow your users or your team to report feedback of videos, screenshots, whatever is working or not working. So I say this is someone like relatively deep in the space, and I've always loved building tooling for myself. But these new launches, and one particular line in particular from the launch, that it was 80% down the way of the page, I think is really what is the most telling about this. So to quickly level set about what OpenAI even launched, let's dive into it over here. So we'll actually go to a different blog post we have over here just to look at what was launched. Cool. So apps in ChatGPT, not super interesting right now. Codex, Sora tuning API, GPT-5 Pro, real-time mini. We're focused on Agent Kit. So that will be the focus of what we're looking at in relation to the AI dev tooling market. So Agent Kit, you've probably seen this screenshot. It's kind of a workflowy type builder. You can add nodes to do certain things. So for example, let's come over here. You have a start. You can have this is supposed to be like a customer support sort of thing. So you have a jailbreak that looks at basically for prompt injections. Then there's a classifier agent that looks at the user's message and says, hey, is this like return item, cancel subscription, or get information? You got some custom logic. So if it's any of those three things, it then gets routed to either a return agent, a retention agent, or an information agent. Each of these agents have their own instructions. You can pass context along from the previous conversation if you want. And so you can see the retention agent has a goal to prevent subscription cancellations. And then there's like a user approval step. And so you can test things in here. So if you wanted to test it and say, I need to return my shoes I bought wrong size, something like that. So run the jailbreak to make sure it's not a prompt injection. It's passed. It goes to the right agent. That's a nice little UX here highlighting the path that it went down. Tell me the thing. Yeah, that works for me. Cool. So you can test this all in here. And then once you have this kind of working well, you can evaluate it. So you can look at previous traces. A trace is basically just like the end-to-end workflow with all the details of what happened. So you can see most recently here the last 5. And you get like all the details of the inputs, the outputs, everything. You can add a grader here to kind of grade all of the traces. So this is what you can kind of use as evaluations in here right now. It's a little bit bare bones, to be fair, but it's there, and it probably will get better over time. And then once you're ready to go, you can publish this using ChatKit, which is their UI kit for adding a chat to your website or application, or there's just the Agents SDK you can use as well. There, the camera's back. Okay, ChatKit is, they try to make it as easy as you can. You still need to spin up a server to do these things. It's not as simple as dropping in a JavaScript snippet into your site and then you get this awesome custom chat sort of thing. But you can do all these fun changes in here. kind of cool. So you can do all this. These basically give your like non-technical people the ability to completely customize how the widget looks. You can give the non-technical people the way to customize to how the agent is supposed to work and test it, evaluate it, and then you'll actually need an engineer to spin up a server. But that's generally what that looks like on the front end. So the components are, there's an agent builder. There's like basically all the MCP stuff you could need with like permissioning built in, which was the big thing that they did have before. There's ChatKit, there's evals, and then we saw the kind of observability and monitoring for the tracing. And then they talk about this like auto optimization where you can like automatically improve the prompts based on like human feedback. So when you're running evaluations of certain things fail or are like not up to your standards, you can have like an LLM then update your prompts for you, which we've seen can risk overfitting, but whatever, that's not that important. Yeah, under the hood, it's using the Agents SDK for all that orchestrating, which we've talked about before, and that's built on the latest like API from them, which is the Responses API. And so we will talk mostly about dev tools, but just to quickly touch on this, we touched on this in another video, but this is not really the death of Zapier. If you spend any time in the agent builder, you'll see it's like a very different type of product. It's very like specific of what it's trying to accomplish. And I think more importantly, even with the rise of MCP, like the integration mode that Zapier and even other tools like N8N, even they're newer, have, is huge. MCP is great, but it has a lot of problems. It's like the wrong level of abstraction. And on top of that, these like integrations that are built by developers, we've built a couple now. We built one for PromptUp, we built it for a previous tool that's really tailored to the Zapier workflow, to the Zapier product. And that's like a huge moat. And so teams want to be able to also have triggers and all these certain things to be able to trigger different things happening in different apps. So it's much more so Zapier is still very workflowy, like things happening in your business and then other automations happen, versus the agent builder is like a way to build lightweight but powerful agents. And so in that case, like, N8N might be at more risk than Zapier, but even N8N, like these products require such customization, these workflow products, that, a generic agent builder from OpenAI is actually not that big of a deal, to be fair. But okay, dev tooling. So in the main launch post, about 80% of the way down, there is a bullet point list of 4 bullets. In the third of that 4 is this line: third-party model support. Evaluate models from other providers within the OpenAI evals platform. This is actually a huge deal. So if we come over to the evals platform, so on the evaluation tab down here, you could look at previous evals. Let's see, you can run this. And I mean, to be fair, the UI is like super confusing, but let's see. For a run of an eval, I can now test basically any model that's like relevant, because they integrate through their partners, Fireworks and OpenRouter, which then gives you access to like all the models. So if I want Claude, I do Claude Bedrock. And what this allows me to do is basically take a prompt that I want to evaluate it. I can have it run against any of those models and test it. And this is a massive deal for the AI dev tooling companies. And so the reason why is because historically speaking, as someone who's in the space and also like knows a lot of the founders in this world, generally you will get this question, right? Like, what happens if OpenAI decides to do what you do? You should kind of always be thinking about this as a startup. Generally, not always, but like it is worth the thought experiment. And until now, there was always like a very good answer. You could say, hey, like users want to be able to swap between models. If OpenAI builds tooling, it would only support their own models. Same goes for like Anthropic. Like these will be like based on all of their own models and internals, and customers want choice. Well, that is no longer the case, and I was really kind of surprised to see this from the OpenAI announcement. And so, on the flip side of something like Zapier and N8N, these companies have been around for a long time. Workflow automation is not a new thing. And like that's where a lot of the money that they make is not really so much in agent building. But the problem with most of these AI dev tool companies is that they're 2 to 3 years old. They don't have as much depth or like refinement as these other like platforms that have been around for a while. So that's why they're much more like at risk here. And so we'll run through a quick example here of what things look like in 2024 versus what they look like now. And so in 2024, basically, if we look at the kind of steps of like what an AI engineering team needs, you need to be able to like design your orchestration. You need to like do your evals and your testing. You got to be able to do like continuous monitoring. And for each one of these, you had to have a bunch of different tools. Some tools tried to do many parts of the stack to like varying degrees of success, but you couldn't use a full OpenAI stack because OpenAI didn't have the functionality and they didn't support different model providers. You need to be able to support all these model providers. And so in 2024, it just wasn't possible with OpenAI. You would have to use tools like, I don't know, there was like the Crew AI SDK, which, like, to be fair, I don't know if people actually used. Usually, we had to do this whole like thing where we just rolled our own rather than using any of the agents SDKs because, to be fair, I don't think they work super well, but you could do that. You can like roll your own. So you have like some kind of like layer of like orchestration there. And then on like eval and testing, there's like a bajillion tools. Like you could do this in PromptHub. There's like Human Loop that just got acquired. Brain Trust. There's like a bunch here. And I guess also obviously to add up here is the LangChain. LangChain launched their own thing, which was, LangSmith. And so on and so forth. And then for observability and monitoring, there's things like Helicone. There's things at like the higher level of like Datadog has something for this now. LangSmith tries to do this. Brain Trust tries to do this too. Like a bunch of these try to be like full stack platforms. And again, to varying degrees of success. But this is what you had to do. And like this is like a good stack, I would say. Fast forward to 2025. And again, the reason why you couldn't do this with OpenAI or like just using an OpenAI stack is because they didn't have evals until about like 13 months ago, 10 months ago. They didn't have the tracing. They didn't have, most importantly, support for different models. You could only use OpenAI models in OpenAI, and that was a huge, like a huge no-no for teams. You need choice. Fast forward to today, and you can use OpenAI across the whole stack, which is concerning. So now this is kind of in between both. So you have, the agents SDK underneath the hood to do all the orchestration, all the management, like, as like any of these SDKs do, they abstract away a lot of different things. So that's like, management. Anthropic has their own, like every one of these have their own now, but now you have evals in the platform, in the OpenAI platform. You have evals, you have fat prompts, you have tracing, which is, whatever, call this observe. Actually leave that down there. Tracing, and you also have the like agent builder for like more complex things of like workflows and stuff. And then you have, you get it, tracing, which allows you to do all the like observability and monitoring. You have the like auto optimization stuff for like CI/CD. And so now you can basically do your whole stack with OpenAI if you wanted to, with the ability to also use these different providers. So you can use Google, you can use Anthropic, you can use all of these different providers in the OpenAI platform to run your evals. And that's massive. Even with the Agents SDK, like you could swap out the different models. It supports for third-party models in the Agents SDK specifically too, as well. So that's a huge shift as well. And they were very clear about this. And they basically said in their post, devs need to be able to use different models. So we have to support that, which is a really pretty ballsy thing to do, because they're basically saying, hey, one, we understand your needs. Two, we're not going to shoehorn you just to using our models. And three, like implicitly what they're saying is we think our models are so great. Test the other models. We think you'll ours. And so we can come back over here and scroll down a little bit more. Again, there will always be like a part of the market that wants to use kind of these point solutions for different things. They might want to use LangChain for some parts. They might want to use Pinecone for something. We didn't even talk about vector storage, which OpenAI, of course, does now. So there will always be a portion of the market that doesn't want the fully integrated stack. They want to pick and choose. And maybe certain tools are going to be like better at doing specific parts of that flow than what the OpenAI tools do. I definitely believe that, and I already know that to be true. But the problem is there's even a larger segment that's perfectly happy to have a single trusted vendor. And there are also like about other benefits from vertical, like having everything, your whole tool stack integrated on one provider, given that you can still test out the other providers. And again, it doesn't kill everyone overnight, but what it does do is it adds another competitor to like every large scale bake-off that people really need to consider now. And that competitor happens to just be, the most dominant AI company in the world. And again, no one's going to get fired for buying OpenAI, and it satisfies requirements of using different models. And historically speaking, dev tool companies have worked in the past for sure, and they could break through to billion-dollar outcomes, but that was mostly because they were competing against like either like large, slower moving incumbents. And here are a couple of like examples here. And so it's not to say that you can't build a billion-dollar AI dev tooling company, but it will be harder than previous dev tooling companies that broke through. But on the other hand, it's a whole new industry, right? It's a whole new world, and so there's probably more room for opportunity. It's more greenfield in that way, but like kind of incumbent to a degree, or one of the main competitors that you're going to have to be worried about now is OpenAI, and so it's like a big shift. It's the first time we've ever seen third-party support from OpenAI in any of their platform tools, and I think Anthropic too. Google does it through Vertex, but like those suck, right? Like no one's going to be using those. And so it makes you think, are vertical processes really the only safe ones? If you're doing anything horizontal, does it just get subsumed either by the functionality in ChatGPT or by the kind of platform play that OpenAI is doing on the developer tooling side? And so again, as someone very deep in this world, I still think there's a lot of opportunity, but this really kind of opened my eyes up to a degree, and I think it's something that's very interesting, something that got really nested in the launch. And so I hope this was fun. I hope whatever you're building is something that will be enduring, and that we all kind of continue on. But yeah, see you in the next one.